So to start, I'm going to begin by unpacking a bit of context around the use case. We're looking at specifically balance inquiry, specifically within a banking and telco focused context. I'll give a bit of context about it, and then we'll get to a point of how it works, and then I'll show a bit of the document that we've worked on. So to start off with and just give it an overview of the use case, it may seem very simple at first, but as we get into it a little bit more, we'll see why it is such a great opportunity, why balance inquiries are such a great opportunity for businesses to kind of capitalize on when it comes to making recommendations and offers. And we'll get to a bit of the heart of how it all works. So very basic idea of a balance inquiry is that a customer, whether you are a bank customer or a telco customer, you log on to a channel. Some instances, let's say it's a bank, it could be your app or a website or your online banking through your computer. If it is for your telco, you'll log in through maybe USSD. Some telcos I know also have an app. And the aim is that you are checking your balance. It's a balance inquiry. So you want to see how much money is in your bank account. Maybe you want to see if you have a set amount of rewards. You want to see how many rewards points you have, or how many you've used, how many are left over. If it's a telco, you maybe want to see how much airtime you have left until the end of the month or until you get a top up. Or if you are on a pay-as-you-go basis, you want to see how much you have left. You want to top up now. Same with data. So basic idea is you log on, but you type in if it's through USSD, *1234#, and it pulls up your balance, and you can see you've got $10 left of airtime and 10 gigs left of data. Then the idea is that with this use case, as the customer comes into that specific channel to check their balance, they are then presented with a type of recommendation, maybe an offer, a nudge, or a piece of information, or something that is presented to them from their service provider, so their bank or their telco, that they can then act on. So for example, if it's you are checking your data balance or your airtime balance, you are then presented with the option to top up, and maybe there's the option of the data bundle that you can top up with is also discounted. So the idea then is that your telco wants you to take up that offer and complete the sale. It seems pretty straightforward. Customer logs on, checks their balance, presented with an offer, they take up the offer. But as you get into more and more of the details of this use case, we start to see why it is such a great use case for businesses, and also more about what goes into making or presenting that offer and making sure it's the right tailored offer to that customer. For a bit of context, I've kind of obviously explained what a balance inquiry is. I'm sure we all do that fairly regularly. I wanted to try and find a few stats on how often people check their data balance, or how often they go and check how much money they have in their bank. But unfortunately, those stats were a little bit difficult to come by. But what I did find is kind of the different channels that people go through. So in the US specifically, amongst obviously a lot of millennials, they use their banking apps the most. So they are logging onto their banking apps about 5 times per week. Not necessarily to perform a balance inquiry, but they are going in through that channel quite often. And if we look at things like mobile users in high income markets, most people will use apps, so they'll use their telco app. But in a lot of lower income regions, USSD and SMS are still the main kind of method for how people check their balances. So specifically also within Africa, over 70% of mobile money transactions are all initiated via USSD rather than apps. So that just paints a picture for the different channels through which people can access, or how they can come to their service provider to perform the task of a balance inquiry. There was also another statistic that said most people check their bank balances before a large purchase. So that's kind of one instance of if someone's taking an action, and that's when they will check their bank balance. And there are different key drivers. So for example, trust and familiarity. If you are familiar with a specific channel, I think it's like habit to just go in onto your keyboard and say *123# or *110#, whatever it is. It just feels like habit. So there's that familiarity that helps decide different channels, as well as convenience. And also accessibility. Not everyone has a smartphone, and not everyone has access to data to go and log on to apps or banking apps. So those are the different kind of drivers and constraints for how people decide which channels to go through when performing a balance inquiry. But the main reason that I wanted to ideally find statistics for how often people are checking their balances, whether it's data, airtime, or bank balance, whatever it may be, is because it presents a really important moment for when A customer is coming to a business. A lot of businesses, most all of them, whether you are a telco or a bank, they have customers and they want to keep their customers engaged. They want to keep selling to their customers. They want to retain them. And to do that, they often have to present new products, new services. You always want to be upselling. So if a customer is sitting on one current plan, let's say they have a specific current account, you want to upgrade them to a new premier account, whatever. In the case of banking, maybe if they have a specific data bundle and you want to upgrade them to a new data bundle, or you also want to sell them new different products. If you buy a SIM plan and you get a device with it. The idea for a lot of businesses to keep growing is that they can keep selling to their customer base and keep their customer base growing. And to do that isn't always the easiest thing. They've got to, as a business, you've got to deliver interactions and offers and recommendations to your customers to get their attention and to keep them coming back to you, to keep buying and upgrading and staying engaged, essentially. That is quite difficult. It requires a lot of effort from back-end systems to keep sending out recommendations and SMSs. And it also costs money. I don't have an exact figure on me, but I know SMSs cost money. So for your telco provider to be sending out millions of SMSs to their customer base to say, here's a data bundle, it costs money for them to do that. They have to send those messages out, and then only a certain percentage of those customers will then act on that SMS and click and go and view what is this data bundle, what is this new product or service. And then only a certain percentage of that will then actually act and convert and click buy, whatever it may be. So that is a lot of effort for a business to keep their customers engaged and to retain them and to keep cross-selling and upselling. And naturally, as a business, they need to keep doing that. But if that is only effective to a certain point, you want to find another way that you can keep your customers engaged and that you can keep selling to them. And this is where balance inquiries present the perfect opportunity, because in this case, the customer is coming to you. It's quite literally the right time and the right channel. We'll get to that a little bit later when we unpack a bit more about what goes into delivering the right recommendation. But this is an instance when a customer is performing a balance inquiry, is that they are coming to you through a specific channel. You do not have to go through the effort to attract their attention and get them to come to you. It's in the same way, if we think of a customer going through a digital channel, like an app or USSD, whatever it may be, it's the same as having a customer walk into your store. If you're a retailer, you put out billboards and ads, and maybe you have someone at the front of the shopping center who's giving out promotional pamphlets saying, go to this said store at the side of the shopping mall. And then you want to get that foot traffic, because that foot traffic then can eventually lead to a sale. And it's the same for digital channels. Your customers coming through app and USSD and all of that, it's the same as them essentially walking into your store. And you haven't had to go through the effort of billboards and marketing and promotions. They've come directly to you. The question then is, they've come to us, we have their attention, we want to present something to this customer with a specific action. We either want them to buy, be informed, convert, complete an action, whatever it may be. And we now need to decide what is the right recommendation then, what is the right offer, nudge, whatever it may be, that we can present to this customer. So that is a bit of the context behind why balance inquiries are such an important use case and why there's kind of this hidden opportunity there. And now I want to get a little bit more into the kind of strategy of how we decide what goes into the right recommendation or the right offer. So we offer a suite of solutions that sit across the customer lifecycle. We've got intelligent discovery right through to proactive retention. So for this use case, it does largely sit within the retention space, because for the most part, a customer who is performing a balance inquiry has a kind of a channel familiarity. They know to go through USSD, they know what the number is, they have downloaded the app, and they're fairly comfortable with how it works. So they know how to check their balance. I do want to make a note here though. I know within like banks, for example, you are considered a new to bank customer for the first 90 days or the first 3 months. As a customer, you will most likely perform a balance inquiry within that stage, even though you sit then within the activate space of the life cycle. And it's the same with the telcos. So there's always this kind of business logic that helps dictate where different people sit within the life cycle. But for this use case specifically, I really want to focus on the fact that this customer is sitting within the retention space. And the main reason being is that there's this kind of habit that they've developed as I mentioned before, a lot of people get into a habit of checking their balances or their bank balances before they make a big purchase. So when we look at how different people interact at different times of the day with these digital channels, specifically within this retention space, we then have a historical view of how and when they choose to interact, how and when they come to the specific channel to perform a balance inquiry. I think we have mentioned it before, but like when we talk about our different interactions, personalities, I never check my airtime or data balance. I think I'm on a subscription plan, so I just get a bill at the end of the month. I don't often check like how much data I have, but I'm always checking my bank balance. I'll stay at home the whole day and I'll just double check to make sure no money's left my account. So it's weird habits that we all just develop for how we choose to check our balances. What's important about that is that it's fairly habitual and it's fairly regular. And with that said, we can then understand, or a business can then understand, how often a customer is going to be checking and engaging with them to then inform how they're going to be presenting these offers and these recommendations. And most importantly, how we can then personalize them to that customer. So this then brings me to my next kind of point of the strategy behind looking at what makes something the right recommendation or the right offer or nudge. This is something we unpacked a few weeks ago when we spoke about the whole process for what it takes to deliver the perfect interaction and, the anatomy of the perfect interaction. So I won't go into too much detail about it, but there are a few points to what is this perfect touch point or offer that we are presenting to the customer. So first of all, when we look at the deliverable. So if you are going to present the customer with something, a product, a suggestion, or a piece of information, the customer needs to actually want or need or has the intention of using that. If I'm going to check my airtime balance and I actually have airtime, there's no point in recommending airtime to me because I have it. I don't need it right now, but I may be in need of data. So it's important there that if you're suggesting, a product or a service or a piece of information, it actually is something that the customer wants, needs, or is going to use. There's also the instance that it has to be right for the business. When we look at things like offers, if you are offering something at a discount, you don't want it to erode your profits. So you need to make sure that it is still profitable for the business. And this deliverable can be a range of deliverables, if that makes sense. So it can be a product recommendation. It can also be a piece of information. I was thinking about when we talk about our interaction personalities, and if you are specifically within this case, if we speak about the example of the person who is checking their balance before making a big purchase, they're standing at the shops, they're about to make a big purchase, they just want to check, do I have enough money in my account? In that moment, it's most likely not the best time to recommend a product that requires a whole sign-up process. But it is the right time to make them aware of that. So in that instance, you can offer them a piece of information. There is a new credit card option available to you, or did you know about this? Have you seen this reward? Have you seen this offer? So it can be an actual product that you're recommending. In this case, for example, where I mentioned a credit card, but it can also just be a piece of information. But the key point here is that you are putting something in front of the customer that is right for them. They're going to want it, need it, or use it. We then also have an action attached to this offer that's being presented. So the customer needs to do something with this. In most instances, it's just a click, like click to go to the next page, or click to buy, or click to read, whatever it is. But ideally, you want the customer to complete and do something with this offer that you are presenting in front of them. And then finally, there's also a cost attached to this. So it can literally cost something. 10 gigs of data can cost, $5. But there's also something like time, attention, and effort. If you just simply want to make me aware of something, like I mentioned in this banking example of you want to make me aware of a new product, the cost is fairly minimal. It's just awareness. It doesn't take that much time nor effort. But if it's something that requires a whole sign-up process, there's a lot of effort that goes into that, even though it may not necessarily cost all actual money. So that is what it takes to kind of deliver the right touch point for how we decide, okay, what are we actually going to put in front of this customer? But then there's also two other factors that this balance inquiry use case kind of takes care of in itself, and that is the channel and the time. So when you are going to present something to a customer, you want to make sure you're presenting it through a channel where they are actually ready to receive it. And you also want to present it at a time that they are most likely, or they have the intention to complete the action that you want. And what's great about this is that balance inquiry in a way does take care of that, because number one, they've come in through a specific channel. You haven't had to decide that. The customers come through, whether it's the app or USSD, they are there. Second of all, you know in a way it is the right time. I don't want to say it's the right time for them to complete the action. They may not do that, but it is the right time that they will see it. And in that case, they will be made aware of it. So as I mentioned, if you're going to recommend a credit card to me while I'm checking my balance before I'm about to make a big purchase, I'm not going to sign up then and there. I'm not going to complete the action in that instance, but I have been made aware of it and I can complete it at a later time. So those two factors here are already taken care of because of the nature of this use case. It's a balance inquiry. The customers come to you. And those 2 points are, in my opinion, what makes this use case very worthwhile for businesses and being able to capitalize on delivering the right interaction. Then finally, something else that we often also talk about is the right tone, making sure that you are speaking in a way that resonates with the customer. When we look at this specifically within a banking context, we look at it from a personality perspective. So if you are presenting an offer to an intentional spender, you are speaking to them in a way that resonates with their needs and their values. So those are the different strategic aspects of how we decide what recommendation we want to put in front of a customer. These are all the factors we need to look at. Is it the right deliverable? They want this product, they're going to use it. Maybe it's an offer that's aligned with them. It's through the right channel and it's at the right time, because we know this because they've come to us, and we're also speaking to the customer in a way that connects with them. So now the question is, how do we ensure that all of that is correct, that we deliver the right touch point, the right channel, time, and tone? And that's where we get into the heart of this use case, which is where we look at the configurations and how it all comes together. And most importantly, what we look at here is the evidence of behavior within this customer's data. So I'm going to share my screen quickly just to kind of give a view of this use case document. It's quite brief, but it does just very quickly show kind of how it all comes together. So we start with a bit of an overview of what balance inquiry is, and we get to some key elements of this use case, and then we look at kind of how it all works. It is very brief. Yes, Rob. You have your hand up. Go ahead.
Sorry, it was a...
Okay. So when we look at this use case, I've kind of already covered point one. It's fairly basic. Customer comes to you, customer's checking their balance. But when we work on use cases for our clients, we put together a machine learning canvas. And canvas always starts with a prediction story. So I kind of want to start with that and just say, what exactly are we wanting to do here? We want to predict the next best offer, and I'm going to put offer in quotes because it can be offer or recommendation or nudge or piece of information. So predict next best thing, in this case offer, from customer context or customer data. We'll get into the layers of what that data looks like. It can be their demographic data, their behavioral data, and their real-time data to drive an immediate conversion during this balance check interaction. You kind of define what the logic of a conversion is. For most instances of a telco use case, it is something like top up your data. And in that case, you do want the person to top up. But as I've mentioned, there's a whole range of actions that you can want a customer to essentially convert on. So that's what our prediction story looks like. So step one then is the user logs in, they check their balance. You then have to map this user interaction moment. We then go into the data analysis part. There's obviously multiple, I don't want to say layers, I don't think that's the right word, but there's different types of data that we look at that all make kind of an informed prediction here. At a most basic level, you're going to start with demographics. Who is this customer? What is their unique customer number or unique customer identifier? And what this does is gives the kind of system that foundational understanding of who the customer is, but not necessarily what they're going to do right now. So you want to look at things like, what is their account type? Are they prepaid? Are they postpaid? If it's in a banking context, are they on a saving? Are they checking a current account or savings account, or maybe their credit facility? What's their tenure? How long have they been with the business? What's their device type? Are they on a smartphone or not? So it's what products do they have? This just kind of sets the context, but on its own, this demographic data is weak for personalization. So now then the question is, how exactly do we personalize? And that's where we get to, what you'll see over here is behavior. So that is the kind of behavioral evidence within the data. And this is one of the most important signals because it reflects what the customer actually does, not what we assume about them, or not what we think we know about them. So it'll look at like purchase history. what have they bought before? And this will then reveal preferences. So if someone's always buying like nighttime data bundles, or, you know, they never buy airtime. So we've, you know, that purchase history indicates like what we can offer and what we shouldn't offer. We also look at things like their spend patterns. So how often are they topping up, or how often, you know, are they doing small frequent purchases, or do they do like large occasional ones, like one big top up that lasts them a while, or do they top up as they go on? So we also look at usage behavior. So in a telco setting, it would be like, how do they consume data or their airtime? Are they heavy streamers, or are they do they use it just for light browsing? You also want to look at then response history. And this was when we were working on a use case, it was like, I think it was a take up history. So offers that were presented versus offers that were accepted. And this is a very powerful signal, because it essentially tells you like, this worked, this didn't. And then that informs predictions moving forward, which we'll get to a little bit later in the use case, which is that kind of continuous learning aspect. Then there's also that real-time context that we want to look at. So this captures kind of what's happening right now that can make recommendations feel more relevant. I think this was one of the first things that I found really interesting when I first started at Ecosystem AI, which was when they were talking about the football example of picking up when people were at a football stadium and they were sitting outside the stadium streaming the match that was going on inside. And then that was the perfect opportunity from that real-time context to say, from, you know, location data, this is where people are, let's recommend this, you know, offer 10 gigs at this special deal or whatever for specifically these people in this area right now at this time of the football match. So that's just kind of one example of why real-time context is so important. There's other kind of elements to this real-time data or context, and that's things like current balance. If someone's logging in to check their balance and they have a high balance, the likelihood that they're going to top up is fairly low because they have a lot of data or airtime. But if it's a low balance, then they are most likely to top up. As I mentioned, that time of day, and this kind of provides that contextual intent. So looking at, you know, was this the time of the football match, then helps inform which discounted data bundles or airtime bundles to recommend to these people. And as I mentioned, location, it provides that environmental context. So those are a few of the kind of data aspects that you'll look at when configuring and putting together this whole use case. The next step within that process is feature engineering, which is then kind of turning that raw data into something that the model then gets trained on and is used. But I am not the tech expert on that. I know Ramsey is, so I think that will be another discussion that we'll have one day, looking specifically at feature engineering. And then same with the kind of next step, which would then be the actual recommendation generation, which is that defining the decision space, so what can be recommended. You don't just invent offers, it's kind of chosen from a predefined set. So you'll look at what products do we actually have to offer, and then decide based on the data which ones are going to be offered and how many options you actually want to show. There's a whole kind of process and setup here, and I know exactly where it sits on the machine learning canvas because it's below the line, and it's a section that I never really look at because it feels very technical. So this is definitely a discussion that we'll have another time, but the main aim is you've done the data analysis, you've looked at all these really important parts within the data, and then train the model, and you can make the recommendation at a very abstract level. And basically, if I had to kind of, does someone have their hand up? I can't see. Yes, please go ahead, ask your question. Okay, no, never mind. If you would prefer, you can drop your question in the chat. Then one of the next kind of really important parts of this use case is this aspect, or this step 5 over here. So recommendation generation, it's presented to the customer. They can click on it. So if it's a case of buy, you know, top up your data now, and it's a one-click action, click top up. In step 5 is really important because it presents the opportunity to learn from this interaction. And that's where we look at feedback loop. So every interaction then becomes training data that the system can then learn from continuously. So after this recommendation gets presented, person logs in, checks their balance, gets presented with an offer. We then check, did they click? Did they purchase? Did they ignore it? What exactly did this customer do? And then from that then becomes kind of a training signal where every interaction in that regard is logged, and then it's fed back into the model, and the system can continuously learn and then improve moving forward. If we know for this customer 590, they checked their balance, we recommended them 10 gigs of data, they ignored it. Let's not recommend them 10 gigs of data the next time. We'll recommend something else. So that is such an important part because one, it avoids bad offers. So you can kind of ensure that every offer you then are presenting to a customer moving forward is refined and it is a lot more tailored to this customer. And it also presents the opportunity to explore new offers that this customer may not be aware of. And then it learns from that changing behavior over time. So this is how it all comes together, essentially, is the customer logs on, checks balance. You want to capture that real-time context combined with their behavioral data. So what have they previously bought? What have we previously presented? And what has been successful? What hasn't been successful? You then want to generate features, score your offers, rank and display them, capture the response. Was it successful? And then learn and improve moving forward. So that's essentially how the whole use case comes together. Obviously, there's a lot more technical detail behind it that I definitely will have our tech team take us through in another session. So my next thing then I'd kind of want to unpack, which would be a bit of the business value. So we always talk about how important it is to present the right offer at the right time for the right customer, because it's tailored to that customer. It resonates with them, but they are more likely to act on it, which is a higher conversion for the business. And in that regard, there's always increased revenue. You can kind of drive those incremental purchases. There's a lot more cross-sell and upsell opportunity. And those are always important for a business. There's also, in this use case specifically, there's less cost or less money spent on outbound marketing. And that's a reduced cost because your customers already come to you. So you are just presenting that offer to them while they're there. There's less, I want to say it's not cost of acquisition because you've already acquired the customer. They are already with you, but it's more the case of acquiring your customer again and again to maintain their engagement and attention. So there is a lot of business benefit there, but there's also a lot of kind of benefit for the customer. So one, more relevant offers. It's always nice when you log on to your banking app or your telco, or whatever it may be, and you're presented with an offer where it's like, how did you know I needed this? It feels a lot more relevant and it really improves that whole customer experience. Every single one of these interactions where I've come to my service provider, be it a telco or a bank, and they presented me with something that feels tailored, it's what I actually need. And I'm like, oh, I can use this. All of those small interactions feed into the whole process of good customer experience. And that is incredibly beneficial because it keeps your customer engaged. And as I've mentioned, when we looked at this specific use case in the retention space, two of the primary goals of the retention space are, number one, keep your customer happy. Number two, keep your customer. You don't want them to leave. But most importantly, you don't want them to leave because they are happy. You don't want them staying with you just because it's convenient or there's no other option or they couldn't care less. You want them to be an engaged customer, and because they're engaged and happy, they stay with you. So in this instance where I'm checking my balance and I'm being recommended offers that feel a lot more relevant to me, it's first of all reduced spam. No one likes being spammed SMSs after SMSs saying buy data, buy data, buy data. So it reduces that, and it also isn't generic. It feels a lot more tailored and suits me as a customer. So that presents an opportunity for how businesses, banks, telcos can kind of shift from these broad-based campaigns, keep our customers coming back. And it moves more into this kind of intelligent space where it's a case of saying, okay, we know we have to put marketing out there, direct marketing, your kind of digital marketing through your apps, your push notifications, whatever it may be. That's still an important part. But it also opens up the space of, there's a space where our customers are coming to us. How can we capitalize on this? And that's what this use case is largely about. I did go through that a lot quicker than I thought I would, but I can open up the space for discussion if anyone has anything to share or any questions. Jay, if you want to actually maybe elaborate a little bit more on that football example that I gave, that would be fabulous.
I just wanted to say that when you think of inbound versus outbound campaigning for companies is when I interfere with your life and I don't know what you're doing in the moment. But if you are already in the right frame of mind and you've got the cognition to trying to solve a certain problem, or you want to conduct a certain transaction, whatever that might be, and you're inbound, you are already ready to accept anything to do with the action you're about to take. So if I send your balance to you in the morning when it's inconvenient, you will ignore it. But when you come to me to check it, you are ready to check it. You already have some kind of decisioning or reasoning in mind as to why you're going there. So that means that I want to run experiments and continuously determine if the things that I'm going to be saying to you, presenting to you, the language I'm going to be using, the personality that I've inferred based on who you are if I don't know you, or the personality that I've extracted over time from your behaviors, are then far more directed and specific because you are coming to me. And you have made the time to perform a certain action, even if that time that you are investing might just be minutes. So the job's to be done, if you think about it, is it the job to be done of that person when they are busy driving or working or in a meeting is to ignore any distractions. The job to be done when you are about to make a decision to engage with a company to get more details is to be quite specific about what you want to get done based on your personality type. So if you are an intentional, you want to come in and you want an intentional offer, recommendation, nudge, message, education, whatever that might be, because you are intentional. You want to get a job done and get out of there as quickly as possible. But if you are an experiential, the job to be done is to be entertained and to be enlightened and to be surprised by something that must be there. And the problem is that companies make an assumption that all things being equal, this is probably the worst language you could ever use. Designing personas is the other of the worst things you can probably do, because you diminish all of the value of that individual that you're engaging with to something that is the same as everybody else. And we are living in a world where we want to be different. So maybe that was just a point worth making, and why this is such a fascinating case for me. It's been enormously successful in the place that we tested it. Is that because you know that you got that captured audience.
Yeah, I like what you said there at the beginning. When you outbound marketing is what disrupting someone's life. I thought that was quite funny. But yes, it's exactly that. Like you said, you have a captive audience. It's right for the customer. Yeah, thank you for that.